Hello and welcome to Unit 2 Revision. I'll be your host today as you watch this video, and hopefully you remember everything that we've learnt this semester. Hello, here I am. So let's go exploring semester 2. First topic that we looked at was, of course, discovering natural environments. And we discovered quite a few, which was pretty awesome. You went to the snow, so you discovered an alpine region. And you also went to the Otways, so you discovered a wet forest / rainforest. And you also did a bit of indoor climbing, so not quite another outdoor environment, but still. And we went to the Royal Botanic Gardens, so you had a look at a managed public space as well. So the first area of study was all about looking at environments, so understanding things such as how to describe the characteristics that exist in each environment. And we did that with our big mural. So each person had a section, and you looked at an environment, you talked about what it looked like, what kind of ecosystem was it made up of. And as you started looking at that, you looked at the interrelationship between all the things that exist there. So the interrelationship between the non-living and the living, so your abiotic and your biotic. And then you had a look at things such as, the environmental changes that come along there. So your day and night, your tides, your season changes, and your longer things, like climate change and all that too. We also had a quick look at how do we determine when one environment ends and another one begins. So have a think about that. Try to avoid the literal, here's a fence, so on that side is forest, and on this side of the road, there's an ocean. It doesn't work that way. So have a think about, how do you know you've gone from grassland to forest? What does it look like? Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking, I can't really remember because I am a visual person. So I think, how did we do this year? Well, we did that mural and we all had our environments on there. So it's at the back of the room. Go and have a look at it. Maybe you can't remember the mural, but you can remember all my really cool board notes, like this one. Oh, oxygen cycle, very cool. Yeah. And then we had a look at the, nitrogen cycle. Yep. That's also in a circular pattern, but very similar to the oxygen in that things are happening, we drop down, things decay, we have things come back up, same with the nitrogen cycle. And let's not forget their little cousin, the water cycle. And we had a look at that too, and there's lots more things going on there. Keywords like transpiration, evaporation, condensation, things with the word sation at the end. Sation. Anyway, so we did the mural, we looked at some of my cool board notes, and of course we went on our adventures. So all of those things can help you determine and remember. So if you're like me and visual, try and remember circumstances that we were in and what were we looking at the time. So yeah, but because the Otways was the last thing that we've done, I'm going to keep sticking with the Otways. I'm going to use the Otways as my example. You're just going to have to excuse my head because now I'm in the way. But coastal environment, wet forest, rainforest, we looked at both. So let's have another look, shall we? Coastal environments indeed. So we drove along the Great Ocean Road and we saw on our travels sheltered bays, inlets, and those tiny cuddled up in corners, and eroded rugged cliffs, great ways to describe the landforms. Then we looked at the flora and the fauna. So we looked at flora and we looked at the grasses and the mangroves, and there's lots of little scrubby things like the melaleucas. And then we went ahead and we discussed very quickly on the bus about birds, and we looked at in class we've talked about the orange-bellied parrot, but let's not forget also the little hooded plovers. And so they're an example. The hooded plovers not so much, but the orange-bellied parrots are a migratory bird. So let's think about that as well. And well, fishes, I chuck fishes in there because, you know, water and all that. And then off we went. We went bushwalking. And we did that in the wet forest / rainforest. And how do you know that it was that kind of environment? Well, miss, it was defined by the damp, cool experience that we were having. Not to mention the types of plants that we saw. So we saw mountain ash, those beautiful tall trees. And then we had things like stringy bark and a couple of myrtle beaches there. And as you got closer to the waterfalls, you noticed there were ferns, lots of them. And you could see lots of hollowed out trees and things, so there was obviously a lot of species that would love that kind of thing. So your leadbeater possums and your sugar gliders. So once you're able to describe your environment, you should be able to then discuss some of the natural changes that happen. Now, these natural changes can be considered in a variety of ways. But before we go too deep into natural changes, let's just go back to thinking about the interrelationship. Yes, interrelationships between the biotic and the abiotic. So biotic, biology, biotic, living plants and animals and how they interact with one another. But let's not forget, they also interact with abiotic things that don't live and breathe. Good way to remember how to describe the two: biotic, living, abiotic, not so much. Anyway, my bad joke. Living and non-living structures. They combine together in their ecosystem to create a wonderful environment that thrives. So you need both, because without soil, the plants can't grow. Without plants, the food can't be eaten. But we need to really clarify which is biotic and which is abiotic. So why don't you pause me right now and try and categorize. Wait, don't pause me yet. Pause me after I've explained this. Categorize all these items as either biotic or abiotic. Go ahead, pause me. Did you pause me? Hopefully that wasn't too hard. Right, let's go back to these natural changes. You can have a look at individual, and it's really easy to describe. I've got a great description there. So you've got your, say, a flower, and it grows and it develops, and then it reproduces, and then it dies, as all living things eventually do, decomposes, and then the circle of life begins again. But then it gets a little bit more confusing when we start talking about community. But all we're really talking about is this word here, succession and adaptation. So some species figure out a way to survive. And that's why I've got the example of the fire-adapted eucalyptus. So they figured it out. Fires are coming through. We need to get used to this. So a whole bunch of plants eventually become adaptable to fire. And eventually they're the ones that survive and the others not so much. Also we're thinking about the difference between short-term and long-term. Short-term is anything to do with day, night, tides, seasons, fires, floods, and your long-terms are the things that take a while. So that's your climate change, it's your adaptational changes, maybe I should say. And yeah, migration also falls into that category. Oh, and last but not least, let's also remember how we go about dividing and distinguishing our different environments. Remember we talked about catchments? Here's a map with all the different catchments. So you get your Mallee region up here in the light blue, and then you've got all your other bits and pieces here, your Wimmera and so on. That's how we define it. It's got nothing to do with an environmental change. Sort of does, but sort of doesn't. It's how we've decided to define the space. Other ways we do it is by the recognition of state parks, national parks, public areas, reserves, all those kind of things. You'll need to know different ones. So let me give you a suggestion. When you're trying to remember with your revision, why don't you just come up with a list? So come up with the following. On one side of the page, write the following: national park, wilderness park, state forest, and maybe marine sanctuary, coastal park. And then give yourself an example for each. An example hopefully of a place that you actually know a little bit about so that you can describe what it looks like. Ha! And the second section, or the second area of study that we did this semester was obviously the impacts on the environment. Now I've done a few videos on these, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them, but I need to maybe just do a quick sum up. So remember, the first thing we looked at was sort of the bigger picture thing, so lots of people involved in what they're doing. So we have commercial, and we put them under the categories of agriculture, mining, timber harvesting, and maybe have a think about infrastructure as well, because, you know, we just put roads willy-nilly everywhere, but as a result, we often cut off, you know, little tracks and ways that wildlife would like to go in. We then looked at recreational, and so we talked about vehicles and the access that we give ourselves to our outdoor environments. We talked about camping, and we talked about different activities. So it could be your rock climbing, it could be your mountain bike riding, canoeing, kayaking. Oh, the list goes on. Last but not least, we had a quick look at conservation and the management strategies that we put into place in order for us to do the other things and do them well. So you hopefully spotted these when you went bushwalking, you know, things like the creation of walkways, and there we are, we're about to go up onto a viewing platform. We did things such as signposting and telling people where to go so that they stay on the track, and that way we minimise the impact of erosion. Also selecting campsites and making us camp in a particular area is a really good thing as well, and not forgetting composting of the toileting. So when you think about us camping out there in the Otways, think about 6 things: staying on track, cleaning, cooking, rubbish management, campsite selection, and toileting. And then you'll be able to explore these. Go ahead, pause me, explore these things. You know you want to. Pretty awesome mind map, wasn't it? Last thing to talk about, urbanisation and technology. Urbanisation, yeah, we get it, but let's have a look at the combination between the two. So when you went to the Alpine region, we saw the impact of technology. Look at those beautiful big chairlifts. And don't forget technology. The advances in technology have allowed us to enjoy what we do in the outdoors so much better. So ability to keep our stuff dry, lightweight, to be able to pack things easier so that we don't have to carry as many things. It's pretty awesome. So when you get stuck, think about the technology that was used when you went skiing, and so you didn't have to get wet and you didn't have to carry a lot. Or you can think about bushwalking, or you can think about skiing, or you can think about bushwalking. It's up to you. You can think about other things too if you like. Just try and keep them on topic. Okay, so for the last part of the video, I'm just going to give you some review questions. So maybe you want to pause the video so you can have a look at the questions, write them down, or whatever you'd like to do. And yeah, check it out. So first couple of questions, talking about the characteristics of the environments, the interrelationship between the environments, then effect of natural changes with the comparison between 2 groups of people, and then what are the different types of environments that we have to play in. Ooh, don't forget there's a second page here, commercial, conservation, recreation, and the environment. Our procedures and practices, our codes of conduct, and of course the impact that technology has had on our access to the environment. So go ahead, pause, get those questions down, and good luck!